what we want to finally end up with, after it's all said and done, is something like this. Something where we are, in Unreal, we've got a virtual camera there, we can actually sort of set things up, and our props that we have modeled all have, reasonable textures on them. They don't need to be high def or anything else like that, but they should look a little bit something of what they're like and everything, and be sized correctly to the character. Like, as much as I want to be able to have the band member doing the absolute busker thing there where they put their foot on the amp that I'm sure every musician hates, we probably want to keep it more closely to like what the actual size is. But more on that later. The main thing we're looking at today is how do we change, something that has a UV like this into something that has a UV like this, so that we can then take it out of here by going down to Image and UV Snapshot and take it into a program like Critter, where we can then just put on the color map, the roughness map, the dial wrap, and all these different, all of these different metallic maps on them and everything. Okay, so we're probably only going to really look at how do we get this UV unwrapped and look at the different UV mapping tools, because that's where we're at so far with our learning. So to bring it back to the original that I've done here, let's first talk about the really obvious ones. So the things that we could do straight away, easily enough. The first thing I look at is any sort of flat faces that we have and everything. So this first face here, UV, planar is going to be your friend. Planar is the extrude, loop cut, and bevel tool of the UV mapping world. If all else fails, use this one. You have two options here, best plane and bounding blocks. I'm just going to use bounding blocks and just go with the one that I suggest. I'm always looking at that. My cheat key to know which axis I'm looking at is just look at the color. If it's blue, it's Z. If it's green, it's Y. And if it's X, it's red. So we're going out on the Z axis, and I'm also going to keep image width height ratio. It's very important because otherwise it will stretch it to the entire extent, and that gives me that. So now, if I look at my UV map, and this probably won't make too much sense now, but I'm hoping it does a little bit later, you'll start to see that that plane that I've just taken is now in that center point there. So I'm just going to shrink that down just into there. I'm actually going to move it to the side now so that I know, yep, that one's done. When we export it, we're only going to export anything that's in this square. So it's very important that we only sort of like use this square, but when we're trying to work things out, I try to move things out of the way. Because anytime I UV map something, it's going to appear in the square, just makes it easier for overlapping. This up here helps us to see the texture density. And as you can see, this looks really nice and this looks really stretched. So it's just a good thing to have. You can, however, switch it off by clicking on here. So obviously, the next one we could go with would be the one back here and everything, but we've also got to consider seamless textures. So when we talk about seamless textures, we mean that we don't want to see like an edge where you can see the texture just abruptly stop and everything. So the way we can do this is that we can move, cut, and sew. So we could, for example, UV map this and then get the edge of that and cut and sew it. UV map this and cut and sew it. But a really easy way I find is to actually use the cylinder map. I'm going to actually do it for the inside of this hub first to show you, and then we'll try it with the outside as well. So if I click here and double click on the next one, that will select everything in the loop. So to do that again, I just select the face in the loop, hold down Shift, and then double click on the next one in the loop, and it will select everything there. I then want to go down, and I'm just going to minimize these ones here. I then want to go down to cylindrical, click there. By default, it's always going to be upright, which means that my UV map is going to take it and kind of like make it go all crooked. So if I want to be able to rotate it now, I want this cylinder to basically be going around the sort of shape. So in this case, I want to rotate it on the X-axis because I want it to just go there. Now there's two ways I can do that. I can either come over here, go rotate axis and type in 90, or click in this little red one here, click on this circle, and then just manually do it. And I'm just going to do it manually so you can see what happens to this UV map as I do that. So there you go, and it's all now straightening up. To show you what I mean by that with an actual texture density on that, it goes from being all this really crooked to actually having straight, even flowing lines. Now we don't have to get this absolutely perfect because we're going to use another tool that's going to just straighten this all out, okay? Because one problem that can happen with this is I still get a mixture of texture density. I can see I've got some really nice here, starts stretching here, and then really stretches on some of these bigger planes. So to fix that, Maya has a really nice tool in there, which is called Modify, Unfold. And what this does is you have to think of it like a seamstress who's trying to sort of sew together a suit or a shirt or anything. This kind of irons it out all flat. So the stitches are all there, it doesn't unstitch it, but it just allows us to iron it out flat. Now it's not going to iron it out straight. However, when we look here, we will see all of these squares are quite even. So to fix that, I can just go modify and go orient shells. And what that's going to do is it's just going to straighten it up either by rotating it 190 degrees or 90 degrees to the top there. It doesn't really matter because as long as we get it from there to there, it's all good. And as you can see now, all the squares are even. And as I scale it down, we get that nice seamless sort of texture here. Because if it goes from one end to the other, it will actually be perfectly seamless, if we get the right texture, that is. So you may have in your sort of searches for textures seen the word seamless. That's what we mean by that. It means that we shouldn't be able to see where the seam is. And we're never going to get perfectly seamless because nothing in life really is. You'll see seams now on your shirts, on your clothes, on all the things that are made. You'll notice where they start and finish, but we try and hide them as best we can. So we can use that exact same principle now for the rest of the amp as well. The only exception, of course, being this face at the back here, but that's okay. So if you look at the back of amps, you'll often notice the leather kind of like wraps around here, and there'll be a screw in there, and then this backing will be just exposed blackboard more often than not. The leather covering normally only goes around the outside of here anyway. So again, just to select these ones easily, I'm just going to hold double shift and select them like that. I can do the same here with these ones and with this line. Oops. And even with this line. Might need a bit of help with some of these other lines here. And I'm including the bevels, not because necessarily they're the best way of doing it, but it's probably the easiest way for this one. So that's looking pretty good. Quite happy with that. And so again, same technique, UV, cylindrical, and I'm just going to do it a different way this time, just to go here, and I'm just going to type in there 90. And so same thing, if I switch on my checkerboard here, you can see it's now seamless, wraps around the whole thing quite nicely, but it's still a bit stretched. Now I could just manually just sort of change these until I get squares and everything, that's fine, but UV unfold just does that automatically. You can just press Control U here with your mouse in the right sector there, and there it is. And that's all done. But as you can see, it's still a bit crooked, so we just need to go modify, orient shells, okay? Now sometimes that still won't do it. Sometimes they'll still be a little bit crooked, or you'll still have to have it straightened. You can go a little bit further with that. For example, you can just go UV and straighten, but you want to be careful with this because it's in its effort to straighten it, it might create some distortions. So we might go here, for example, modify, and there it's UV here, straighten UVs, and it starts to crease it up a bit and everything. So you just got to be careful with what you've got there, but if it's still looking a bit crooked, like here, for example, you can just go modify, straighten UVs, and it will just straighten them up like that. Or you can do it manually just by using this scale tool and moving it back there. But yeah, just try to keep it from being too stretched. So when I'm rescaling it, I'm always using the center one to keep that square casing consistent. So we're almost there. That's really good. So then that leaves us with this. The other good thing about UVing with this UV editor is sometimes it's really hard when you're just sort of going through and selecting each and every sort of individual face. But in here, if you right click and hold and go to 11 o'clock here, you can see this UV shell, which means I can just select the shells that I've already UV mapped. And so that one there for some reason is all the way up there. Yep, because I put it there, that's right. And I'll put that one there as well. But I can also select the ones I haven't selected. So I can see, okay, I've still got this backing here to go. So that's, yeah, that's okay. We'll go with that. And in that one, we'll just go planar. And because it's the blue key, that's the Z axis, don't have to change anything here. And we are good and golden. So that's the main case of that already done. Nice and easy there. But you'll notice here, the back is not the same amount of squares. So I could, again, just take this shell here and just be like, okay, let's just resize it until I get something like a consistent shell. Or there's a nice tool that's also in Maya that's, you know, quite unique there, where if you click here on transform and then go all the way down here, you'll eventually see this texture density per unit. And what I can do is I can say, right, get the texture density here from this one that I've just selected, and I can then click on this shell and go set. And it will resize it so it's exactly the same. And now I might just move that down a bit, and as you can see, it's almost perfect. That edge there is just spoiling it just a bit, but you can see now for yourself that just does that nicely. So yeah, that's just going to mean that when we move those shells in, that'll be all right. It looks like I've just missed this face here, so I'm just going to go ahead and select it and go again, planar, and then select this again, go get, and then select this and go set. And there we are. Excellent. Cool. So the main part of this body is done and dusted. Next one I want to look at though is these shell casings here. I'm just going to go separate. Oops, sorry. Separate. So yeah, these like little beveled sort of edges here that normally protect the entire casing, because it sort of gives that brass bevel on the end there to stop anything from getting damaged. As you can see, not a great UV map. How do we UV map this? Because it's not really a cylinder and it's not a sort of face or anything else like that. One way we could do this is by using best plane, UV map and unfold. So I'm going to press Control 1 to isolate, and I'm going to go UV, and this time I'm going to go to best plane. I'm going to change it from bounding box here to best plane. And what that does is it basically takes an average and looks at, all of that sort of shape there. And as you can see now, I've got a nice consistent UV map on that side and one on the inside, if that's something I wanted to worry about. You could technically, to save faces, get rid of this side here because we're not actually going to see it. But you might see it in just some small spaces in there, so I'm just going to keep it just for all time's sake and everything. This on the side here, though, is a bit of a conundrum because if we look at it here, it's kind of there. Now, again, it's not too bad, and again, you're not going to notice this, and it does provide us a nice, even sort of shell here. However, the problem is that we now have one sort of face, and it's kind of going over the top of each other. So the reason this is going purple is because it's a combination of red and blue, meaning that this is flipped. It's only going to render it on one side, and it's going to actually render it back to front. And that can cause all kinds of shading issues. So we really want to separate these out a bit, and I'm going to do it just by getting this edge here and basically cutting this off from here. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm actually just going to use cylindrical. I'm not going to actually bother even trying to get the angle right. I'm actually just going to go here to UV shell, go straight to unfold, and then that's all just there and ready to go. And then I can just move that there. And now these are two separate shapes, which means I can grab the one that is not facing the right way and go here and go flip. Doesn't matter which way I flip it, as long as it's blue by the end, that's the only thing that matters there. Okay, so we just scale this down here as well. And then we might just scale this down and put it around one of these ones. So again, we'll look at how to arrange a UV map so that we can export it all out as one square, but this is just there just to sort of, get our positioning right. So I'm also going to move that over to the side here. We're going to use a bit of a lotus diagram scale in a second. So that is that. Now again, two options here. I can go through each and every single one of these ones, just the way I did there, or I can delete those and just, do what I did in here before, which is just duplicate it over. It's up to you. If you want the practice, you can UV unwrap them, or you can just duplicate them across. The next ones are these knobs here, these dials that we have. Now, again, we could go through the whole marking seams unfold and everything else like that, but I actually think we can just quicken this up because, again, we're not going to see this other face on here because it's inside there, so I'm just going to delete it. And then with this one here, I'm just going to go Control U and unfold because it's already unfolded there. I can then just go Orient Shells and then grab this, get, select this one, set, and then just put that there. And then again, same with the other thing, I'm just going to move this down here. I'm probably going to make this my dials square and try and get as many of these dials onto this one spot here. So same thing, delete, Control U, modify. Straighten shells actually has a shortcut as well, I thought it was, or Control L is layout, so could do that as well. But then get, set, So it's no surprise, a lot of people don't like UV mapping. But if you want job security, find the things that people don't like and learn how to do them well. Because a lot of people pay quite handsomely for you to UV map their models, because it's not something that everyone wants to do. But if you get good at it, it's a very highly sought after skill. So that's there, that one's done. This one here is the one we're working on. So get, set, and there, and then, yeah. Again, I don't want to spend too much time going over the same thing. It's obviously the same technique all the way around. I did want to get to this last one here, because I'm sure that this probably scares a lot of people, because when you look at it, you can't really use a cylinder. Because you can put a cylinder in here, but it's really only going to work if it's on the one sort of part that it's facing and everything. So that's not going to work. Can't use a planar because you only get one side of it. So how do you do it? Well, fortunately for us, because it's a sweep mesh, it's already been UV unwrapped. So that's something important when you're looking with sweep meshes here. That's something you don't have to do. It's already here. You could, if you're sort of being particular, isolate it and then do a marked edge and unfold, where you select the top of here, select the bottom of there, and then have a seam that goes all the way across. But it's kind of already done that. You can see it just here. The one that's that really strong white line is the seam, as are the circles at the top here. So it's already been UV unfolded. All we really need to do is click Control U to stretch it out a bit. I'm not too sure if that's doing anything or if it's already stretched out. If it's already stretched out, fantastic. If we wanted it to be a higher resolution, we could sort of pull it out like this and have it as its own UV, so that, whatever sort of UV we have, we sort of get it on there. But really, it's whatever you need to get it done. Sometimes I would advise stretching it out a bit thicker than it actually is, because that allows you to paint it a bit better. It allows you to get an actual texture on there and get it looking the way you want it. You're just going to have to remember that it's going to be stretched, so you're going to want to sort of change it that way as well, or bring it down. Because again, stretching it up like this isn't really an option, even though it gives us that nice texture density, because it's now off of that map. So yeah, you just got to take that into consideration and just have it here. Again, with most coils, people are going to look too closely at them, so you can get away with a fair bit. And that's pretty much all the shapes that need to be on here and everything else like that. So that's actually really good. I'm just going to skip ahead, get the rest of these, and then we're going to talk about how do you scale these all on and create a layout that is actually going to work, and talk about different techniques for that and everything. So just give me a second, and I'm just going to finish off these last ones here. So there.
Yep, but you need to get this checklist from me that I just did for you as per your request.
Awesome, thank you.
So I'm just actually going to delete these ones here and then just model them in. So D, G, and as a trick with symmetry, if you need to flip something over to the other side, you can just go over here to the Z axis, go scale, -1, and I'm just going to move that there. Just going to go mesh combine. Over a bit so it's connected. sure that's not poking through. And yep, good. So then combine X. Good. And then combine Control G. And what Control D does is just center it there. So then we can just go on the y-axis, -1. Actually, no, up, and then duplicate. Yep. Cool. Awesome. Cool. So, if we now separate. So this centers the pivot, this deletes any history, and this zeroes out any transformations. Very important to keep doing that, especially once we get close to animation. So now we've got all that there. What we will have in here is a lot of things stacked over the top of each other. Because I just duplicated these, they're UV carried, but what that means is that they have all now got, you know, multiple UVs and everything. So what it's necessary is I'm gonna just have over here, and then when I select this, and select this, you'll start to see they're all over the top of each other. But because they're actually separate objects, I can just grab them. If I see any of them that are flipped like this, I can go modify, flip, move them down. Separate, box select, modify, flip. Move them down a bit. They're already pretty good, so they just need to be moved to the side there. And modify, flip. Cool. So now, as I select them all, see, I've still got a few here that are doubled up. I'm just going to make sure, yep, they are the only ones there. And here we are, these ones. The flip, move up here. They don't need to be flipped, but I'm going to still move them up here. This is over there, that's over there. Good. So now, yep, I'm actually going to go combine, and now I'm just going to get these shells and start stacking them all together. What we'll probably do is just get the metal sort of texture onto this square, so that when we're texturing it, it's just a lot easier. We don't have to worry about getting around some of these edges. Typically, you don't want diagonals. If you can avoid diagonals, make sure you do, because what you'll get is what's known as anti-aliasing, where here you'll get these sort of squares just digging into the edges of your sort of shell. And it can't be avoided because it's just been UV mapped as a sort of straight line. Now we could straighten this line out, make a perfect rectangle, but that's probably going to actually just do more harm than good and take up more time. Really, we just want to keep them all here, and if we just have a solid block of color of texture here, that'll be fine. So we've then got this. We can see there's another red one here. We just need to flip that, and that one is there. So we want to get all of these eventually onto this middle part here. And it almost looks like, no, why does it look like there's two? No, okay, cool. So again, if we're thinking strategically ahead, we want to think about where all of these are going to fit onto this one here. Just need to see that one. There's another dial, so that can go up here. So yeah, let's take care of the dials now. We've got rid of the brackets now. Now we just want to look at the dials. So again, they're all the same shape, except for this one, which is a little bit larger. So we just want to start stacking them on top of each other. It's not going to matter too much. This is where we start to rotate them. So starting to get a bit creative about how we flip them together so they take up less space. Typically, as a UV artist, you want to use as much space as possible. You don't want to leave any empty space. If you leave empty space, that's just leaving memory on the table there, because it's going to take all of this no matter if you use it or not. That's where you get trim sheets. So if we don't rotate this, cool. That's there, and then that can go here. Rotate. I know I broke the rule there by just making that a little bit bigger than the other ones, but that's okay. I think we'll be fine. So we've got one square up here, full of these, one square down here, full of these. I have this other one over here, and then we've got one square over here. So we just need to now condense this all into one. The way you can do that is, so this has not been UV unwrapped. So this is still stretching here. So I'm just going to do a planar from the front, Z axis. There we go. And that can just sit around there as well. Again, you can take this, go set, that, and get and set. And so there we are. Cool. All right, so I was hoping we could fit that in there, but I don't think we can do that and keep the same texture density. So it's just going to have to go out there, and we'll find something else to have in there. Huh. That somehow got left behind. There we go. And then there we go. It does fit. Excellent. Good. So we just need to stack this. Move that there. We want to move this into the center, and then once we've done that, the way I tend to do this to try and get it all into the same one is you can select this, select this, like this, and that, and then just scale it on so it comes into there. But that's not really going to work because it's not for all the other boxes filled and everything. So I think we're just going to have to scale this down, put that in one corner over here. Have these guys in one corner over here. And more often than not, the main thing is just remembering where everything is, so that when you bring it into Krita, you already know where things are. You don't have to second guess yourself when you're texturing. I'm gonna, because this is there. Wait a second. Two. Okay. All right. It's a bit weird. So if you ever find something like a shell that's out here and you have no idea where it is or what it's doing there, just click on it in here, go into the 3D view and press F, and you'll then see it. Okay, so it's just here. It's supposed to be a part of this. That's probably got a part missing there. That's okay. Easy fixed. Edge, edge. You can see the corresponding line lines up there. Go, move and so. It's going to look horrible. Go unfold. Orient shells, and we're back to normal. All good. Excellent. So that fixes that fixes that, and then we just need a space for this to go here as well. Now again, we want this to go all the way across here, so I'm going to grab this cable and rotate it. And again, not too worried about that needing to be seamless because it's already a cable and already looking good. This is here. So unfortunately we do have a bit of space left over here, but we also don't have the Marshall logo on here. So that's probably where I'd be putting that on there. I wasn't able to get the actual sort of Marshall thing on there, but what we can do is just quickly just go save as. just go type. And again, as you can see, these already come out UV mapped pretty well. So that's nice and tidy, and we can put that in this corner. And here we can just type Ma. Sorry. Cool. And if we just take second to look at the logo, we'll try and go for some sort of brush script. I think that'll work just nicely on that one. So into existing, that might actually work close to, so we might come back to that one. But there is a brush script up here that I'm pretty sure will work. That's a bit fancy for that. Again, not exactly, but pretty close, but that one I think is probably going to be the one we settle for. Yep, it's got the M, it's got the thing. Might try it. Yep, that's cool. It's a bit thin, but we can work with that. Cool. All right, so with that in place, we'll scale that down. Put that there, and that's going to make up the rest of our UV, because as we saw it before, it's already been UV unwrapped pretty well. You don't need consistency on this one, so, oh my goodness. Cool. Once it's there, a bit bigger than usual and everything, but that's good. That can exist there, and that UV can exist in the corner here. So that when we now combine this all together, so UV editor, yep, so I can see there's a bit of crossover there. Where's the, okay, it looks like there's two of these. Wonderful. There is. There we are. And if we then scale this down into the corner, that can fit and fill up the rest of the space that was there. And now bring all of it together. Got that there. So I'm just going to scale this down further, scale it right down to there. There. Scale this up. Cool, excellent. So we have actually used up now most of that space there, and we have a very nice tidy UV, okay? So that's what we're going to look at for this video. Next video, we're going to go into, okay, how do we take this UV out of here, start putting a texture on it, because we're going to go through how do you use Krita to get multiple things. So not just your color map, but your roughness map, even your normal map can be made here in Krita, which is really cool. It means you don't have to necessarily go to finding all the things inside of ambient CG, but we will be using a lot of those ones in there. In fact, I've got those in that folder there, and we will be using those, but that's a whole other session, and we'll take time for that one there. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. And yeah, we'll get this amp all rigged up and looking nice. Excellent. See you next time.